Welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your co-host, John Mickton. And one of the things that I think all of us do is as educators, and I know that happens also in offices because both of my adult children are in office situations, the water cooler talk, that conversation you have over the coffee or the water, and it's like, did you believe, or can you believe, or they said this, they said that. And one of the things I always reflect about rumors and why people like having those conversations is because by nature we like stories. And nothing is better than a good story. And the stories around the water cooler, and I would say in the staff room or wherever you are, where multiple different people from an organization congregate in a more casual, non-work, you're still at work, but maybe you're having a coffee or you're just taking 10 minutes to sit down, or you're at the photocopier. I hear there are a lot of people have met their wives around the photocopier. Oh, so it's nice because you get a story, and what do you want your audience to do is to be engaged. So sometimes you have to embellish it a bit, or you have to drop a kind of an undefined piece of information that leaves them hanging. And then what happens is they go off and continue that conversation. And, we're all up in arms about disinformation and misinformation. It's been around forever, and I don't think there is a better place to get more misinformation and disinformation than a faculty room, a staff room, or a corporate dining area. But one of the things I think sometimes is the reason people do that, it's a way to let go. It's a way to release maybe some tension. It's a way to synthesize and process some ideas or some thoughts or some information that you're not clear about. And my two guests today, I think, have just done a phenomenal job at really kind of containing that in such a graceful, respectful way, but also giving an opportunity for those voices around the water cooler, the rumors, the disinformation, did you hear that, really to come out, but in a way that's super constructive. And really the idea is that you can turn that around with some advice, maybe some strategies, maybe some new dispositions that you're going to engage with. So I am excited to have Aimee. Aimee is the international educator and learning coach. She's an obsessive tinkerer of better ways to teach and lead. And I really encourage you to go up to or out to LinkedIn because she's doing some great work, and follow her there on LinkedIn. You will see what she's up to with some of the work that she has been doing. Aimee Skidmore is the full name. And she works with teachers and leaders and international schools who want students to step up and share responsibility from learning. She's a big believer of co-designing learning with students, and she helps teachers move from doing most of the work to creating spaces where students think, engage, and take ownership. And with her is her co-host is Jacob Roche, who's the Director of Education Technology at the Collège du Léman International School. He's an experienced head of education technology and has a lot of history working with pedagogical initiatives on a K-12 scale and also in primary and secondary, and really comes with a lot of skills around blended learning, instructional design, learning management, and professional development. And I'm just so honored and pleased to both have you here, Aimee and Jacob. A warm welcome today.
Oh,
Thank
thanks,
you.
John.
We lost your
great.
visual, John.
We lost one.
We lost your visual.
Oh, my visual. Yeah, visuals sometimes are a little difficult because when you have multiple cameras, they often don't cooperate. So we're going to go back to the camera that we want to see. And if it doesn't work, we will not worry about it. Anyway.
This is natural for me, John, because I'm used to hearing you because I'm an avid listener of the International Schools podcast. So.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And
So,
I feel kind of, it's nice because I got to be on your podcast, which I think people definitely, I highly recommend you need to go and listen to this amazing podcast called the Teacher Staff Room. And what I'm going to stop talking, because I think the first thing I would love to hear, and the way we'll do it, I'll let you both kind of interrupt each other and decide who gets to have air space. But you do such a graceful job on the podcast, so I'm not that worried. So why this? We're at the water cooler. We all have been at the water cooler, and you've kind of turned this around in a way that's super constructive and really helpful. So tell us, why the teacher staff lounge?
Good question. Why the International Teacher Staff Room?
Staffroom, sorry.
No, don't worry. This is I probably started this, and I got Aimée on board, and she was kind enough to do this experiment with me. She was on the first episode, and I was like, "What if you just stayed and continued?" And you had your list of demands that you said, "I'll do it if," which were all very, very reasonable. But it started because I wanted to create a podcast that kind of connected theory to practice. I've been fortunate enough to work in, well, I've worked in non-teaching positions in education where, a lot of the people in the room, aren't currently teaching or haven't taught. And while I was doing that, I was thinking, what do teachers really want to hear? And what really helps teachers feel better about what they're doing or helps them in a situation that they're in? And it went back to that staff room and that advice you get in the staff room. So then it's like, well, how can we recreate that in a podcast form? So that's kind of how we came up with it. And then Aimée, of course, has just been fantastic with her advice and getting people to write in, which I know we'll talk about later. But yeah, that's how it started, just with an idea. And anybody out there thinking about starting a podcast, just do it. And I know, John, you've been really important for me. I think I spoke to you about this before I even started, and you were just like, yes, just do it. Just record. And all of a sudden, one day in September, we weren't ready. We didn't know what we were doing, and we just started recording, and we gave it a go. And we've done a whole season now. So it's been one of the best things I've done this year.
Congratulations on having a full season. That's wonderful. Now, Aimée, tell us, what were your list of demands? I'm curious, when he throws that out. So I'm just curious, because obviously you said, okay, podcast, that's great, but these are some parameters. And I think that could be really interesting for us to understand what those parameters were.
Yeah, there's nothing secret there. It's that I said, look, we're busy people. I don't want to have to do a lot of prep. So that was one of them. And the other was that I don't want to be given all the advice. Like, I know some things. I don't know everything, obviously. So I was like, I don't want to be in a position of being a know-it-all, trying to tell people how to do things in their classroom. I said, I'll do it if I can take my coaching stance and I can take a coach-like approach to giving that advice. And that was agreed upon. I also said, I'm looking forward to bringing people on who have specialities in some of the areas that we don't, so that can fill in the gaps that we don't have. And that was really important to me, that there are no one correct answer and there are no people that have all the answers. We remain curious and we remain, reflective, and that's how we approached it. So if I said, as long as we can do that, I'm happy with that.
So the thing that you do, which is really interesting, you pick a topic and then you, I actually explain to us. So you have a topic, people send in questions. How do you get these people to send in questions? Something that you do is it's anonymous, and that I would like to unpack a little later, because that comes with a lot of nuances and complexities. And then usually you have a third person, and I had the privilege of being in one of them, where they come and they have maybe a specialty in an area, or you just think it would be fun to have them in there. Kind of walk us through this process of kind of the structure that you came up with, which is quite unique for a podcast.
Well, how is it supposed to go and how does it go? That's the two things, right? So we've done it in every order. Sometimes we get letters about a particular topic and we go, great. New to an international school, our first episode, out of all the letters we received, there were 3 about new to an international school. So I was like, great, that's our theme. And then we got a guest host who we thought would be good for that, and we recorded it. Now, the second episode that you were on, John, Teacher Recognition is Important, all about teacher recognition, was one where we wanted to have that as the topic, because at the end of each episode, one of the hosts or guest hosts recommend, what would you like people to write in about? And the guest host at that time said, oh, I'd like to explore teacher recognition. And, he thought that was really important. So then we went out and found people through our networks and said, like, hey, I've heard you talk about this before. Would you write in a letter about this? And so, out of all the people we asked, we did get 3 people to write in about teacher recognition. So we've kind of done it both ways. We knew we wanted to have an episode about AI. And so, again, we reached out to our network. Sometimes we get people writing in. Sometimes we have to ask. It's difficult. And the only reason I go into this long-winded explanation is, if you write into the show, like, there's a chance your letter will be read on the show, because a lot of people, we have a lot of listeners, but a lot of people don't want to write in. And I don't blame them. I mean, to sit down one evening and type up a well-crafted letter to a podcast, like, a lot of people won't do that unprompted. So yeah, that's kind of the long answer of how do we get letters? Well, all sorts of different ways is how we do it.
And the format is stupid simple. I love it. It's so retro. And we were like, look at us, we're retro. We're just doing an agony in modern days, like, without, it's exactly the kind of clippings that my grandmother used to send us from, the newspaper. So I was like, I love the format. And we kind of thought, is it too simple? Is it too, and then we had so much feedback about how great that structure is. Literally unfiltered conversations from teachers. They because it's anonymous, there's no fear of judgment. They don't have to be performing that, professional attitude that they might have in a school setting. So very happy to have that as our format. And it's such an easy prep for us, because literally letters come in. We talk about it. We try not to spoil and talk about it too much together between us. But so that's how we go about it.
So the anonymous thing is interesting, because for many of us that have been international school educators for a period, there is this, and I don't know if it's still around, but when I was a school administrator, there was a thing called International Schools Review. And the thing that you really did want as a school administrator leader is to end up in there. And I'm sure people wrote about me, they wrote about a lot of my colleagues, and it tended to be quite toxic. There was a level of toxicity, but there was also a level of honest feedback, and it kind of got mixed together. And I think that venue, and I don't know what has happened to it, if it's still around, but that mixed toxicity with some honest feedback, I think really made it quite difficult sometimes. And there were very mixed feelings. It really kind of made a wedge between administrators and schools and maybe teachers. And what my question to you, when people write to you, of course, their email and everything, but then is there like an agreement, or how does that work? What are you doing to make sure that they, is there something that you say, or when you started this, you said it's anonymous, you sent to this, teacher, say international teacher, Staffroom, and you don't look at the email? I'm just curious.
I don't know, John.
Yeah.
I don't know who these people are. We
Okay.
keep thinking we know, because I'm like, Jacob, is that so-and-so? And he's like, I'm not telling. No, I don't know.
Okay.
Period.
So Jacob is the gatekeeper.
I am, and it's just a very simple Google form. You can leave your email address or not, because sometimes when people have left an email address, I write back to them and say, are you sure you want me to read this? Are you sure, like, this part might not be traced back to you about how upset you are with your head teacher at your school? Like, I just want to make sure, so I do that sometimes. And I get into a little back and forth with the letter writer as we start to kind of shape this letter so it will both read well on the show and we make sure it's completely anonymous. So I've done that back and forth. But yeah, people don't need to leave their email address. However, what I find is a lot of people do. And I think by just going to me and then just kind of having their best interest, just like in the staff room. I feel like, in an ideal staff room, people are trying to help each other, giving each other anonymous advice, like, hey, if I were you, I would do it this way, is really what the show is all about, from people writing in to, being on the show.
Now, you say there's some back and forth and you're doing some curation. Is that really to try to anonymize even more? Or do you sometimes just take the story and recreate it as a case study? This is something I do when I do online learning, or even at the Principal Training Center. Often experiences that I have, I co-construct a new story, but with some of the tension. So I'm just curious, how much do you sometimes have to really say, listen, we need to rewrite this from scratch?
Well, it's because teachers are they're so in their own head about some of these issues. I mean, these issues that they write in about have probably gone around in their brain thousands of times. So it totally makes sense to them, but they've never put this problem that they're facing to letter, to paper. So when it comes to me, sometimes it can be quite jumbled. I don't understand certain parts, so I have to kind of reach out to them and say, like, I don't really get, what you're saying here. I don't really understand what this part means. And then some letters, because they've been so in their head about it, are just way too long. They're just very long. And I was like, all right, how can we shorten this up? So, we're not reading this very long story. But I hope by people just even writing these things down, it's cathartic in some way to get it out. And that's what I've heard from some letter writers. They say, hey, this was just a really good process for me.
I think you have a really important point there, because sometimes, you need to kind of talk it through somebody. And that's what, as what's so nice about being in an international school, or schools in general, you have these colleagues that might be mentors or people that you just go next door and you just vent, and they're going to listen to you and they're not going to comment. And it's that's kind of a process. Aimee, you talked about kind of this, you brought up the idea of coaching, and that you really want this to be more of a coaching conversation. Maybe talk to us. So, Jacob's got this letter, he's curated it and made it, palatable for a general audience. And Sherlock Holmes is not going to find out who said whatever. I'm just wondering, talk to us a bit about the process on how you are synthesizing that and giving a return as the conversations that you lead.
Well, one thing that I have changed somewhat in my perspective, the more teachers I work with, especially in coaching relationships, is that there's a lot of shame in teaching, right? We are afraid to admit things. We are afraid we're not doing enough. We're afraid that we're not getting the results, or someone in the next room over is better. And so I'm very conscious of that when I give that advice, that person has that living underneath the surface sometimes, and we need to be sensitive to what those people are going through. That takes a lot of courage to write in and to be straight up about what's happening. I also understand that teachers want to feel like they belong to a group, and that's the feel around staff room. I'd love to talk a little bit more later about this idea of what happens in a staff room, what should be happening. But this idea of belonging to a group, that there are people out there that understand what it feels like to be where you are, that is important to me, that comes through in how I speak to people. You are not alone. You are not crazy. This is what's happening. It's happening for a lot of us. And we're here to group source your issue that you've come up with, or that you've asked us about. So that's kind of the way I take it. And I do believe that teachers have everything they need right inside of them. They have it. They just need someone to help them to reconnect with that and to bring that to the surface and point them in the right direction, and they can figure it out themselves.
So would you say that, if you're celebrating your first year of podcasts. And would you say there is a pattern? Is this shame thing, this idea of concept of shame and not being good enough or not doing enough, does that percolate through the kind of questions you're seeing, or is it far more varied because each topic might be so different?
No, I think I haven't categorized the letters, but yes, one of the top categories of letters would be the "Am I crazy?" letter. Am I crazy, or is this weird? Like that kind of attitude to the letters. And one of the ways, because Aimée is right, we don't give advice. We don't always know. We try, but really, usually what you get is, oh, something similar happened to me, and then either we or the guest host, in your case, John, when you're on, you did a great job of this, oh, something like this happened to me. I know, like this, and this is what I did. And sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. But it's really making that person feel like they're not alone with their issue. Other people have faced this issue. And if you're facing this issue, and one of the nice things about having three, they might get three different paths that they could take, one from each
Absolutely.
person. And that's usually what you experience in the staff room. Like lots of people will give you advice, and then it's up to you to choose which way you go.
So Aimee, you said the staff room, and so you call it the staff room. So it's a virtual staff room, and you can come in and ask your questions. And Jacob and Aimee are always there with a guest. But let's kind of think about, as you said, what is the staff room? Why is it so important? Because often there are different opinions on the staff room. You'll see people say, God, that staff room is so toxic, or, oh, it's so nice to connect with other people that I never see. I never see the primary teachers, or I never see the secondary, whatever it might be. So it's a place that's very multidimensional and also generates a lot of different opinions. So I sense that you think the staff room has a clear purpose in a school environment, and you created a virtual one, but talk to me a bit about the staff room as such.
Well, that was, the name of the show and this idea around staff room, you're right. It's very different depending on the school you're in, depending on who you are, how much time you spend in there. And actually another colleague of ours brought this up as an issue, like, oh, the staff room, you could go in a lot of different directions with that. But as I started to reflect on that, the podcast is the staff room we all deserve to have, and we don't. And so teachers who don't have that can come to us, because that's where, that's what we're providing. It's the staff room where it's okay to say, I'm really overwhelmed. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm a failure. I'm rethinking I'm going to overhaul my whole classroom. And I'm unsure about this, or I just had this terrible experience with a parent, another teacher, a student, but I'm still a good teacher because I'm in there with others. And for me, the staff room, the physical staff room, hasn't always been the best place. And sometimes you'll stay away from there. Sometimes you go in to find just your buddies, but we want this to be that kind of a place. And I will say that I have often in my past contributed to unhelpful, toxic staff room environment because of what I was bringing in there. So this is an opportunity for us to provide that for people and to drive the kind of staff room that we all want to be in. That positive, yes, there is a solution. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. To me, it's lovely. Yeah, it's lovely to be in that space.
Yeah, for example, in the last episode, Classroom Management Nightmares, I think you did this perfectly when one of the letter writers said, I admitted to, I'll paraphrase here, but I admitted to struggling with this one student in my class, and this one student, I just like their behavior is just really difficult. And this other person in the staff room said they have no problems with that student, and that student is really well behaved in their class. And you called that out, and you were like, that is an unhelpful comment. People do not need to hear how, if someone's struggling with the student, another person in the staff room saying, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. They're brilliant in mine. So, the staff room cannot, isn't always this beautiful place of supportive colleagues. And sometimes we address that in the show.
Do you think by nature a staff room does have to have a level of toxicity because that is part of the process of unwinding, and that is it's the known place where that can happen? It's almost like an unwritten rule, or is I'm curious because I would say from my experience, and I know when I was a school leader, you were very careful about going in the staff room because the vibe would change, And I'm just wondering, do we need to have that place where there's toxicity?
I don't think it's toxicity. I think you need to have an honest place, a place where you do feel like you can voice your opinion about something. Some of the best instruction comes out of the staff room because it's where teachers gather to talk about their students, to talk about pedagogy. There has to be a place for teachers also to vent. And then there have to be people around who will take that vent and say, we hear you. Yes. Let me help you see a different perspective. Let me help turn this around for you. Let me give you a hug and have a cup of tea with you. And that is the person I try to be every day in my physical staff room, because I wasn't always able to be that person throughout my teaching career. And teachers are in different places. I was once that person that needed to vent, that needed someone to be there. But I'm also conscious that negativity rubs off on people. It's not always helpful. And so I think, I don't want to call them gatekeepers, but to have a few good eggs around who kind of can help to say, yes, let's contain that venting, let's hear it, and let's help you move forward, and let's support you as you can find a different way through. So I wouldn't call it toxicity. I would say honesty needs to be there. You need to feel like when you walk in there, people have your back. Is it a place for administrators? I don't know.
I don't know. All I know, it is a place for teachers, and I'll speak in absolutes here. It might not be true, but go to your staff room, get in there. Like if you're new to your school or new to teaching, you should go to this. You should be there. Don't hide in your classroom all day. Go to those common spaces where teachers gather, whether that's eat lunch with other teachers or go get your coffee with other teachers, because I think that's really healthy to be around other people in your school. And if it's overly negative, well, try to subtly switch that narrative around. But I think if in a healthy school, there are these common places where teachers gather, and and if you're not, you should start.
It's interesting you say, even if it might be a little negative, go in there and maybe subtly switch things around. In some ways, I think when you're giving advice or you're mentoring people through the podcast, you're really trying to turn this around into more of a constructive, positive outcome. However negative the situation might be, or maybe somebody might feel quite helpless, or it just feels like there are so many hills to climb here. Where do we even start? And you both kind of said with some hesitation that we're cautious. We don't give advice. We just share stories. Talk to us a bit about where's the line, and are you like the advice? You call in the AM radio late at night, and you're as you see in old movies. But are you that kind of place? Or are you hesitant to say we're an advice place, but we're more a place where you share your story and then we give you anecdotes, kind of more as a mentor?
At the beginning of each episode, we always do a disclaimer that says we're going to give some advice. You don't have to take it, but we're going to do our best to give you something that you can try. And sometimes because when we talk to listeners and get feedback on the podcast, they like it when we give advice. They like it when we say, oh, you should do this, or I think I know what the solution is here. But it's really difficult because even with the most well-crafted letter, it's difficult to really totally understand what's going on. So yeah, we try to give advice. It's harder for Aimee because she's an instructional coach and but I think that comes into it perfectly, and it probably balances me out a bit. The fact that she's got this background in coaching and can help sort of guide it into a place that gets the person to do whatever great instructional coaches do reflect and think about it from a different perspective. And to be honest, I probably learned a lot about
It's
coaching
magic.
this year. Yeah.
So
It's magic. It's magic what we do.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like you have a bit of a yin and yang. Jacob's like the harsh reality. Here's your advice: do this. Aimee, you're far more about constructing almost like a journey of dispositions and thinking to really get them in a place where maybe now they can use some tools to solve that. Maybe talk about why you're taking that approach. And it's good. Very likely that's why your podcast works. You have these two very different approaches, and then you have the third, and I would love to hear about why the third. So Aimee, talk to us a bit about your kind of antidote to Jacob's honesty.
Well, I will say that if I have an opinion that or a strong opinion about something, or a strategy that I've actually used that works, it's sometimes I like to lean into that, because in my coaching, I try not to do that. So sometimes if I have a thing, I'll be like, I have exactly the thing that's going to solve this for you. Let me just give it to you. And that feels good. But I do believe that my role is to help people remember what they already know, reconnect with that, and then give them the courage and the encouragement to go and do it. Yes, you can do this. And sort of point out, here's what I'm observing about the subtext of that letter and how you might be feeling because of this. So I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, I don't have the magic bullet. I don't think there is one. It's so context specific that I think teachers need to trust themselves. And I see that as well, this lack of, autonomy, this feeling that am I doing it right? People are telling me what to do all the time. My curriculum tells me, my bosses tell me. Where do I trust myself? Where do I trust my gut and my experience and my expertise? I want them to lean into that and really, really accept it. So I will say sometimes I give myself the little, joyful moment of telling somebody, but most of the time I'm taking a different stance, because I know that's what works for people, that they have to feel empowered. And how do you do that? But show them themselves.
But I think
probably
one thing
theme
that's
two of the letters.
interesting. Go ahead, Jacob.
Oh, that's probably theme 2 of the letters. First type of letter is, am I crazy? The second type of letter that we usually get is, I'm trapped in a situation. What should I do? Those are probably.
But Aimee, what you're saying, which I think is really interesting, is you talked about that sometimes you have a strategy and you deliver it, but sometimes what you're really doing is getting them to do some introspection and realize they have the skills, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, but somebody has to just help them validate that and rebuild that confidence to say, yes, I can do it. And you see that sometimes more important in your role in the context of the International Teacher Staffroom.
Yep, absolutely. And I want, this is what I like about this podcast, is that it gives a voice to the teacher in the middle who does not have their own podcast, who they're not shouting around on social media or writing books, but they need to ask things. They need to express their opinions about certain things, because some of the letters they have a strong opinion. I'm sick of AI. I refuse to use it. Tell me I'm wrong. Those kind of things. So I think that the giving of that permission and to validate those voices coming out of the classroom, we need more of that in education. We need more of that. I won't say less thought leadership, but I want to hear teachers and I want to give them a space. And this is why I love this podcast, because we hear direct from a classroom to on air. And that's a really lovely place to sit in.
Absolutely. Now, you always have a third person that comes in, and the guests, you have them often pending maybe their specialty. So you both have very different approaches. Are the guests kind of the middle ground, or does it vary on the guest?
Well, the guests, I think what I like about having the third guest is A, they're necessary, and B, I like having people on that are authentic and it's just their true. I don't like it when people are like, I've prepared and I know it inside and out, and now I'm just going to read my responses to the answers, and it's going to be very formal. And so one of the reasons for this podcast is, how could we get experts on like you, John? And I mean, you're authentic all the time, but get them so relaxed, giving authentic advice to real life situations. Like and maybe because it probably came out of too many theoretical conversations about AI I was having with people that weren't in the classroom, that I was like, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way to get these people that are very knowledgeable to give real advice to people who are currently in the classroom. So how can we make that connection? And that's what the letters do. So I think it's been, people that have been on have said they've enjoyed it. And I've certainly felt relaxed with the people that we have on, and we have a good time. So that's
I like that. I like that
in.
part.
Yeah.
I like that part too, Jacob. I love to get people who spend a lot of time in either administrative positions or thought leadership to actually talk to the teacher. If you had one thing to say to a classroom teacher at this moment, how would you translate what you're talking about over here to them direct? And this is something you and I, it was an unexpected benefit, but we talk about that quite a bit. The getting people to be their authentic selves on, because most of these people have come out of the classroom at some point, or they come out, they were in the classroom, so they reconnect with that and what it feels like through talking directly to a teacher. So I love that piece too.
But I think it's interesting that you bring that up, is that they've come from the classroom, and if you're inviting mostly educators, you can't go through being a teacher without having had time in the classroom. It's kind of it's a non-negotiable. So it's interesting to see, and maybe for some of your guests too, it's a wonderful time to say, oh, this is what it feels like, or if I was doing this in the classroom, this is how I might do it. So I think it's interesting how that, as you said, it's a way to almost make them authentic. Don't give us some thought leadership. Don't give us some strategic goal. Just what would you do in a concrete way? Is there any topic that you have explored and said, no, we're not going to do that, because you both felt that too controversial, maybe too much? Or are you quite open, and it's more organic as the questions come in, something percolates up, as the one you said with being recognized professionally? You had those 3 letters, and then that kind of made you think, let's do that. I'm just wondering, are the topics completely organic? Do you have also, from you both being on the ground floor working with teachers, you just have, oh, that's a theme we need to cover because it's a kind of a hot topic right now?
A little both, I think.
Yeah, you go.
Yeah, I'll just talk about that in terms of things that we want to talk about. These are also things we wish we were writing that letter in. So we try to get other people to write about the topics we want to talk about. And you'll hear us laugh about AI, but yeah, we want to hear ourselves in it as well. And so that, we'll look for topics like that, but also there are topics that are sensitive because they could lead to someone leaving their job, losing their job. That was an episode that was hard for me because I didn't want to give advice to someone that would ruin their career. They did something incorrect with their leadership, or they quit the job and then they're sorry about it later. So it's more about the advice that becomes sensitive, less about the topic. I don't know, Jacob, do you think we haven't found a topic that we're not willing to talk about?
No, we'll talk about anything. More careful. Like we did have our leadership was very skewed to women in leadership, and we thought all the writers were women. So of course, you and Nancy did a great job with that one, and I was there, and I'd like to believe I helped, but certainly not an expert in that.
Yeah. But and also in terms of what people want to talk about. So sometimes the third person will reach out to us and say, hey, I love your podcast, I want to be on. And we're like, what do you want to talk about? And then they'll tell us, we're like, all right, go get some letters. So we'll ask them to go get the letters, or they'll give us 5 or 6 topics. And we're like, okay, we can put out some letters. And then Jacob and I will think about, that's one that I like that topic. I can see that in my own classroom. I can see that in the classroom of my colleagues. And then we'll put out a request for letters around that topic. But we want people to also engage with their network and bring those people in. You talked about diverse, like, how do we choose the people? One thing I'd like to see more of in future episodes is other teachers who are currently teaching full loads, like not having other roles like many of us do, like Jacob and you, John, and most of our guests have also had other roles as well, maybe feeling a bit more comfortable in a social media space, or that I want to see teachers from the classroom. That would be interesting for me moving forward.
When you, there are 2 patterns. Is am I crazy? Kind of letter, is this real? And the first one, it was more kind of just like, this is what I want to do. Is this, do you see any other patterns? Is there anything else percolating up as you've had a year, you very likely have seen a lot of questions. If somebody from, let's say somebody from Mars lands in this room right here and they say, what's the climate? Is there a climate right now compared to, say, maybe pre-COVID in the teacher lounge, in the International Teacher Lounge?
Yeah, the overarching umbrella, I would say, and Aimee, go ahead and disagree, but teachers feeling stuck in their career, maybe lost a little bit of the joy or the spark in what they're doing, feeling like they're being targeted for one thing or another, and that's leading to them feeling, just like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? I can't leave, but because of this, and this reason, or maybe I should. So they just feel stuck and they don't really know which direction to go. So they're reaching out to, hopefully, not just us on the podcast, but other people that they know as well. But that's probably the number one theme.
And Aimee, talk to us a bit about that.
Well, I would say, yes, I agree with that too. There's a frustration with systems, a frustration with the heavy focus on exams and grades. I see that kind of frustration. So teachers are speaking up because they want it to be different, but they are not sure how to go about doing that. Is that different from years ago? I don't know. I don't think so. We've always been, fight the system kind of. You'll hear that voice coming out in many of the letters. But I do think there's a increase in the worry about students' disengagement. How do we reach them? What are we doing now we have all these all these distractors in young people's lives, from social media to AI to devices to all these things, this feeling of helplessness to do anything about student engagement. I'm seeing that coming through as well.
It's interesting that you bring up this topic of engagement, because I think it amplifies itself even in other, I'm a big fan of Your Undivided Attention, and recently they've really been talking about this idea of, how people, and this is a huge assumption or a summary of many podcasts, but this idea that, are we thinking deeply enough? Do we have the time to think deeply? And do we have the toolkit to think deeply? And then that percolates down to kids. And, just everything is so busy. There's just so much. And as you said, the distraction. And I'm wondering, is because of that disengagement, then people feel stuck because they don't know how to engage with the disengagement? Or is it they're just like, this is no more for me? I'll let either of you answer that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. There have been some letters like, maybe I should just get out of teaching. Maybe I should get out of my school. Those feelings coming around probably because of that. But I would argue it's more what Jacob was saying, that they're like, where do I go from here? I want to move into leadership. That was our leadership episode was about that. I also would say that teachers will call it discipline or classroom management, when I really think it's a lack of understanding of how do we get students engaged in a system like we have in typical international schools. That's the big driver that I see, both in the podcast, but also in my work with teachers globally.
And I think at some level is this disengagement requires a new type of classroom management. And, I often say to people, it's like AI is a great example. When I went to teacher college, there was nothing about AI or media literacy. It just didn't exist. And so you kind of have to, be a lifelong learner. I know it's a horrible term because everybody uses it, but you kind of have to be really relearning constantly. And I think at some level that becomes quite challenging for people. Or as you said, they feel stuck because they just don't have the energy, or they want to do something bigger and better. Your audience is only international school teachers, do you know, or you don't? I'm just curious. Are public school teachers coming to you?
I will tell you before Jacob answers, I don't have any idea, John, because Jacob, he's keeping information from me.
I want
he's a smart man.
this could be its own letter. Aimée would be asking me about the numbers all the time, and I want this to be totally pure. Like, I do it because I love it. I hope 3 people listen. Oh, actually, I hope 4 people listen. I hope the guest host listens and the 3 people that wrote in listen. And beyond that, I don't really mind. But we have had a few letters from international school teachers of people that want to get an international school teaching.
Okay.
And I would encourage anybody who wants to get into internationals. I'm sure they find you in this podcast, before they get into international school teaching, but maybe they should listen to your podcast, John, first, and then they should listen to ours, because ours might be like, I don't want to ever turn anybody off international school teaching and some of the issues that we deal with. People might say, ooh, that sounds really difficult. But I think we get some like that. We sort of challenged people who were not teaching, who were weighing in on AI, to listen to that episode, because it was 3 real teachers dealing with real issues about AI. And so often I see the AI conversation turn really theoretical, and when you walk the halls of a school, like, that's not the way it is, right? These are real teachers. They don't want to know what education is going to be like 5-10 years from now and how AI is going to change everything. They want to know how they're supposed to give their end of year essay in 2 weeks, now that so many students are using ChatGPT for everything, right? So, these are, so we did challenge people to listen to that episode. Other than that, mostly for international school teachers. And that's who we get. That's our audience.
I would say also, because I don't pretend to know anymore what public school education is looking like. I started there, but I've been in international school so long that I wouldn't pretend to have that solution. And we also have specific drivers, in international schools that others don't have.
Yeah.
And so we understand that language. We understand that climate and environment, for profit, not for profit, but still the international realm. English language learners, this is massive. We keep getting letters that deal with that, which, we hear it in public school, but I don't pretend to know anymore. And Jacob, you started in public school, yes?
Yes.
Public school teaching, but it's been years.
Yeah.
I was in Los Angeles many, many years ago. I can't even imagine what it's like now, And so, Jacob, I'm going to come back to what you said, because I think this is really important, because really, and Aimée, you said this too, it's about giving teachers a voice from what I call the trenches. You're trying to say, this is what reality is like in the trench. And you have your guests who might be administrators or people that were in the classroom but aren't. But the focus is always that this is the reality. And I think your short anecdote about AI and telling people, don't tell us that ChatGPT is going to be making our souffle next week, because that's not going to help me with 20 kids, and of which 5 are moving tomorrow and are traumatized, and those kind of things. And I think there's often that disconnect. And I think it's really hard sometimes to be grounded. And I love the way you kind of challenge people to say, hold on the AI story, this is what AI looks like in a school, in a classroom, when you have a million different things happening. Because I think if anything is the way teachers have to multitask, they always say schools should be more agile. I'm like, just go into a kindergarten room and watch a kindergarten teacher talk about agility and adaptability. It's phenomenal. So I really appreciate you highlighting that point. Is there anything that you, now that you've done your year, you're thinking, oh, we need to kind of recalibrate, or you're happy to keep going? I mean, what have you learned from this as two individuals? You are leaders, you're educators. What are your kind of learnings? What are you walking away with after a year?
Okay, I'll go first, and then Aimee, you go, and then I'll think of a bunch of better things to say, and then I'll go again, and then you go again. Mine was just start a podcast. And John, I don't know how you feel about all these well, no, I do know how you feel about all these international school podcasts that are appearing, and you're like, wait, I've been doing this for a very long time, and now we've got all these new people coming in.
My thing is, as I always tell people, the reason I do this is my professional learning. Because when I sit with two individuals like yourselves and all the guests we've had, we're at 160 guests. I am so grateful and so appreciative that they take the time and that I can ask questions and that people listen. That's it. And I am not going to get into like the hierarchy of my podcast. I don't even know how many people listen to this. We're not making money. This is because I just feel there's a space. And if people like the space, then engage with it. So I know that it's really super easy to do podcasts. There is a lot out there. What I notice is it's discipline. You have to do this. We do them every 2 weeks. We release them. When the summer and everybody's on holiday, you need to go and find a guest. And so it is kind of, there is a fair amount of heavy lifting, but that heavy lifting for me is professional learning. So I hope that maybe answered your question.
Yes, and I want to use that as my answer. And so that's because I feel exactly the same way, except one part. The reason why we have seasons is so we can take a break in between seasons. So season 2 will be coming out starting in September.
Ooh, my algorithm can get a bit of extra space.
Yeah, go ahead. You win the summer, John. Okay.
Okay.
But yes, I want to count your answer is my answer, because you said it in a very nice way, and that's the way I feel too. And the nice thing about starting your own podcast is everybody we've asked to be that third host has always said yes. So we get to connect with all these really great people and learn from them through building this thing together. So I mean, that is why I do it. But Aimee, what have you done?
Yeah,
now the pressure's on. My big goal in my work is to make things better for students. And the way I do that is to make things better for teachers. And this is a way that I can do that and add to the positive voices out there telling teachers, keep going, you've got this. Yes, the system is messy. No, you are not crazy. No, you are not broken. And you get to decide how you're going to show up in all of that. And we're here to help you and be adding to that positive voice. There's never an episode I get off of where I'm thinking, oh, that was boring, or, I always feel energized because I know we've made something a little easier for another teacher in the profession. We've given them a way forward. And so that I'm just adding positive, which Jacob knows me. I have not always been the case. But in this case, all I do is positive, and that feels so good. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So we're coming to the end of this wonderful conversation. And just so the audience knows, we actually all live very close to each other. And you see a bit of a woody background, both Aimee and Jacob are kind of doing the chalet look for the weekend. So it's just been really nice that we actually sometimes get to see each other physically, but we're doing this podcast as it is. When we wrap up, we always ask, what is one thing you would want to share to an educator and a student? Thinking about what you've been doing over the last year, kind of the whole journey that you got here, and you have your guests and your topics. What is something you would just want maybe an educator, and I include school leaders in that category, and then a student, just something based on your learning from doing this over a year?
Oh, do you want me to go first again?
I'll go first.
Okay, you go.
What do I want to say to teachers? I want to say, you got this. Make space for your students in your classroom, and they will step into that space. You do not have to do it all. You need to just, make sure that that's a partnership in your classroom, and things are going to be okay. I guess, I don't know if I've learned that from the podcast, but that's what I'm seeing in my work lately. So
Thank you.
Mine would probably be, just do the thing that you want to do, and do it. I don't want to say badly, but ask for help and just do it and put it out there, whether it's a student or teacher, like create that thing. And I know a lot of people are waiting for it to be perfect, or they're waiting for the right set of conditions. And we see this with students, and this is why I don't finish the project or whatever. But I think it's also true of teachers. Like, they don't actually do like the thing that they want to do. And I would say what I've learned is just do it. Like, we just made a podcast. We just did it. And here it is. And now we're on International Schools Podcast. So we're very, like, it's been, there was a reality where we didn't do the podcast, and it would have been a worse year. So my advice is just do the thing.
Yeah. And thank you, because I so enjoy it. And I think if you haven't, it's the International Teacher Staffroom, and you can find that on all your favorite podcasting apps. And I am sure you can go back and re-listen to season 1, which I highly recommend. And please make sure you connect both with Jacob and Aimee. They're there on social media, and definitely people that you want to follow. And we can't wait till season 2. When's the beginning of season 2? It's a bit like a TV series,
Well,
you put
we
it on your
ended
calendar.
season 1, and this is a bit of a spoiler. We ended season 1 with an award show, because we thought, why not do an award show? And
Cool.
The International Schools Podcast maybe won an award, but you'd have to listen to find out.
I will listen to
you have to listen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, so when are you guys back on the air?
September.
Okay,
But all the episodes are like pretty evergreen. Like, you can listen to them anytime. Classroom Nightmares is fine. Don't listen to it in the summer.
Okay.
But other ones, should I stay or should I go? Or, teacher recognition is important, or the realities of teaching with AI. Like, all those you can listen to pretty much anytime.
Awesome.
All the topics are evergreen, so keep writing in. That's really what makes it happen. If we don't hear from teachers, then we don't have a show. So we need people to write in about any topic they want. We will deal with all of them. Big problems, small problems, no problems, anything.
Yeah.
So if that topic is not appropriate for the water cooler or over a cup of tea with your colleague, you have the International Teacher Staffroom that is more than happy to help you. And they'll bring a third guest who might be an expert or somebody that you can lean on.
Or you.
Both of you, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and a real privilege to have you with us today. And can't wait for season 2. And to our audience, thank you. We've had, again, a flurry of followers on LinkedIn, and a lot of feedback on our screen time, winning screen time with Patrick Green, and also some great feedback on the one that we just released already about Lego. So thank you so much for your continued support. It means a lot to us. And we look forward to seeing everybody at our next one. Thank you, Aimee and Jacob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.